The grand hall of the royal palace shimmered with an otherworldly glow, its walls pulsating faintly as though alive. The alien queen sat on her throne, a towering figure draped in flowing robes that seemed to shift colors like liquid starlight. Her presence commanded awe and fear, for she was not just any ruler but the sovereign of an empire spanning galaxies. Around her, guards stood rigid, their metallic armor gleaming under the soft luminescence of floating orbs that hovered like captive moons. She had summoned him, a human soldier captured during one of their border skirmishes, to answer for his insolence. His name was irrelevant. What mattered was the audacity he displayed when caught staring at her during negotiations gone wrong. Humans were known for their defiance, yes, but this level of brazenness bordered on madness. Yet here he stood now, bound yet unbroken, his eyes meeting hers without flinching despite the overwhelming odds stacked against him. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade slicing air, sharp and cold. "How dare you look at me?" It wasn't merely a question. It was an accusation laced with venom, meant to cow even the bravest soul into submission. But instead of cowering, the human smiled, a slow curve of lips that somehow softened the tension in the room. "Because you are beautiful," he replied simply, his tone unwavering. There was no mockery in his words, only sincerity. And perhaps it was that unexpected honesty that made her pause mid-breath, her regal composure faltering ever so slightly. For all her power, all her authority, no one had ever dared address her thus before. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of energy coursing through the veins of the palace itself. Guards exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene or let this strange exchange play out further. Meanwhile, the alien queen tilted her head ever so slightly, studying him with piercing eyes that glowed faintly beneath delicate ridges framing her face. She searched for deceit, for hidden malice behind those simple words, but found none. Only quiet resolve wrapped in calm amusement. And then something remarkable happened. Her expression softened. Not entirely, mind you. She still radiated authority. But there was a flicker of curiosity now, mingled with something else she couldn't quite place. Perhaps it was intrigue, or maybe admiration? Whatever it was, it unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Without another word, she gestured sharply, dismissing everyone from the hall except for the two of them. The guards hesitated briefly before filing out, leaving the vast space eerily empty save for the low thrumming of the palace's life force surrounding them. Now alone, she rose gracefully from her throne, her movements fluid yet deliberate as she descended toward him. "You think beauty is enough to stay your execution?" she asked finally, circling him like a predator sizing up its prey. Her voice carried both menace and curiosity, a dangerous combination that kept him alert despite his outward calm. He chuckled softly, surprising her once again. "No, I don't expect beauty or anything else to save me. But if I'm going to die today, I'd rather go out telling the truth." Her steps faltered momentarily, though she quickly recovered. Truth? From a human? Such notions were almost laughable among her kind, where politics often danced hand in hand with deception. Yet here he stood, daring to speak plainly while others would have groveled or lied outright. "You humans are peculiar creatures," she murmured, stopping directly in front of him. Up close, she could see the faint scars etched across his skin, evidence of battles fought and survived. They intrigued her, these marks of mortality, reminding her how fragile his species truly was compared to hers. "Peculiar." He raised an eyebrow, amused by her choice of words. "I suppose that's better than calling us barbaric or primitive." "Oh, make no mistake. You are both," she shot back, though there was less bite in her tone now. "But also different, unpredictable." She paused, tilting her head again as though trying to decipher some enigma written plainly upon his face. "Why did you really look at me?" For the first time since their encounter began, uncertainty flickered across his features. He hesitated, choosing his next words carefully. "Maybe because I saw someone who doesn't need to hide behind anger or fear to rule. Someone who commands respect naturally, not just through power." Her gaze narrowed, suspicion creeping back into her demeanor. "Flattery will get you nowhere." "It's not flattery," he countered firmly. "It's observation. You're fierce, yes, but there's more beneath that armor of yours. Something softer, something real." At this, she froze, her breath hitching imperceptibly. No one, not even her closest advisors, had ever spoken to her with such insight. Most feared her wrath too much to venture beyond platitudes or calculated praise. But this human, This infuriatingly bold human saw right through her facade. Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace, shattering the tense stillness between them. Red lights flashed overhead, casting eerie shadows across the chamber as automated voices announced an intruder breach. Both turned instinctively toward the entrance, where heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor outside. "Stay here," she ordered curtly, already moving toward the door with predatory grace. But he shook his head, stepping forward despite his restraints. "No offense, Your Majesty," he said dryly, "but I've been in enough fights to know when trouble's heading straight for us. Let me help." She stopped dead in her tracks, turning back to glare at him incredulously. "You are unarmed, bound, and outnumbered. What possible use could you be?" He grinned, a reckless, defiant grin that somehow managed to charm even as it irritated. Sometimes it's not about weapons or numbers. Sometimes it's about knowing how to survive. Against her better judgment, and partly because time was running short, she activated a small device on her wrist, releasing his bindings with a soft hiss. "Prove yourself useful, then," she growled, tossing him a sleek weapon retrieved from one of the nearby guard stations. "But if you betray me—" "I won't," he interrupted, catching the weapon effortlessly. "Cross my heart." Her lips twitched almost imperceptibly at the absurdity of the gesture, but there was no time to dwell on it. Together, they moved toward the entrance, ready to face whatever chaos awaited them beyond the golden doors of the royal palace. As they stepped into the corridor, the air crackled with tension. Shadows danced wildly along the walls as emergency lights pulsed in sync with the deafening alarms. The sounds of combat grew louder ahead, punctuated by the harsh clang of metal against metal and the occasional burst of energy fire. The alien queen moved with purpose, her flowing robes trailing behind her like a comet's tail, while the human soldier matched her pace despite being unfamiliar with the labyrinthine layout of the palace. Without warning, a group of armored figures rounded the corner, their weapons drawn and aimed directly at them. They weren't her guards. These intruders wore blackened plating adorned with jagged insignias that glowed ominously red. Mercenaries, likely hired by factions eager to exploit the chaos brewing within her empire. Their leader stepped forward, sneering beneath his helmet as his gaze locked onto the queen. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "Looks like we've caught ourselves a prize. Hand over control codes, and maybe we'll let you live long enough to watch your precious empire crumble." Her response came swift and cutting. "Over my dead body." She raised her hand, palm glowing with an intense blue light, a sign of her innate abilities primed for attack. The mercenary laughed darkly. "That can be arranged." In that moment, the human acted. With a quick motion, he hurled himself sideways, knocking the queen off balance just as a barrage of energy bolts seared through the space where she had stood moments earlier. They landed hard against the polished floor, her startled gasp muffled by the cacophony of battle erupting around them. When she looked up at him, her expression was a mixture of fury and disbelief. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, scrambling back to her feet. "Saving your life," he shot back, already firing the weapon she'd given him with surprising accuracy. One of the mercenaries staggered backward, clutching a smoking wound on his chest plate. "Call it returning the favor for letting me keep mine." She didn't have time to argue further. Summoning her strength, she unleashed a wave of telekinetic force that sent several attackers flying into the walls with bone-crunching thuds. Despite her power, however, the mercenaries kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. Reinforcements poured in from side corridors, forcing the pair deeper into the palace as they fought desperately to hold their ground. The human proved surprisingly resourceful, using every bit of cover available to avoid getting hit while picking off enemies with precision shots. At one point, he ducked behind an overturned table, reloading his weapon as shards of plasma scorched the marble inches above his head. Peering out briefly, he spotted the mercenary leader barking orders near a large console embedded in the wall. "If we disable that terminal," he shouted over the din, pointing toward the console, "we might buy ourselves some breathing room." She nodded sharply, understanding immediately. Without hesitation, she launched another concentrated blast of energy, clearing a path toward the console. Together, they sprinted forward, dodging incoming fire and weaving between collapsing debris. Just as they reached the terminal, the mercenary leader lunged at them, swinging a wickedly serrated blade. The human parried the strike with his weapon's barrel, gritting his teeth as sparks flew from the impact. The queen wasted no time, channeling her powers into a focused beam that struck the blade mid-swing, shattering it into fragments. Seizing the opportunity, the human delivered a solid punch to the mercenary's gut, sending him sprawling. "Now!" he yelled, gesturing toward the console. She didn't need to be told twice. Placing both hands on the surface, she channeled her energy into the machine, causing it to overload with a brilliant flash of light. Sparks erupted violently, and the entire system went dark, plunging the corridor into temporary silence save for the fading echoes of destruction. Breathing heavily, they exchanged a glance, hers filled with reluctant admiration, his tinged with triumph. But their reprieve was short-lived. From somewhere deeper in the palace, a low rumble reverberated through the floors, growing steadily louder. Whatever reinforcements were waiting in the wings were mobilizing fast. "We need to move," she said urgently, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward a nearby staircase. "There's a secure chamber below. We'll regroup there." He followed without protest, trusting her instincts even as adrenaline coursed through his veins. As they descended into the heart of the palace, the weight of their situation settled heavily upon them. This skirmish was far from over, and surviving it would require more than skill or luck. It would demand trust, cooperation, and perhaps something neither of them fully understood yet. Reaching the secure chamber, they found themselves in a dimly lit room filled with ancient technology humming softly, as if whispering secrets of the past. The alien queen swiftly activated a holographic interface, her fingers dancing over translucent panels that sprang to life with intricate patterns. The human watched intently, marveling at the seamless blend of organic design and advanced machinery. This was no ordinary safe room. It was a sanctuary of knowledge and power, a testament to her civilization's ingenuity. "This should hold them off temporarily," she muttered, more to herself than to him. Turning, she faced him with an unreadable expression. "You fight well for someone so fragile." He smirked, leaning casually against a console despite the gravity of their predicament. "Fragile? Is that what you call humans these days?" Her lips quirked slightly, a hint of humor breaking through her stern exterior. "Perhaps resilient suits you better." She crossed the room, her movements elegant yet deliberate. "Tell me, why does a soldier from such a distant world find himself entangled in our conflicts?" His smile faded, replaced by a thoughtful gaze. "Survival, mostly. My planet has seen its share of wars, alliances shattered, and empires crumbling. We adapt, learn, fight. Not always for glory, but sometimes just to see another sunrise." Her eyes softened, reflecting a depth of understanding that surprised him. "And here I thought humans sought conquest above all else." "Not all of us," he replied gently. "Some seek peace, connection, even beauty in the chaos." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden jolt that shook the chamber, sending sparks flying from one of the consoles. The queen cursed under her breath, rushing to stabilize the system. He joined her, his hands moving deftly over controls foreign to him yet instinctively familiar. "You're quite skilled with our tech," she observed, genuine curiosity in her voice. "I've had practice," he admitted with a wry grin. "Your people aren't the only ones fond of shiny gadgets." Despite the urgency, a spark of camaraderie ignited between them. They worked side by side, their banter lightening the oppressive atmosphere. Each shared glance, each fleeting touch as they navigated the complex systems, spoke volumes of burgeoning respect and something deeper neither dared name. Finally stabilizing the defenses, they took a moment to catch their breath. The queen leaned back against a console, regarding him with newfound interest. "Perhaps there's more to humans than meets the eye," she mused aloud. "And perhaps," he countered, meeting her gaze steadily, "there's more to queens than cold steel and sharper tongues." Her laughter, rich and unexpected, filled the chamber, echoing off the walls like music. In that instant, barriers crumbled, revealing glimpses of vulnerability beneath their warrior facades. Yet outside, the storm raged on, threatening to engulf them once more. The secure chamber vibrated again, this time more violently, as if the very foundation of the palace trembled under the weight of the assault. A deep, mechanical roar echoed through the thick walls, growing louder with each passing second. The alien queen's eyes widened in alarm as realization dawned upon her. "They've brought siege machines," she whispered, her voice taut with urgency. "We don't have much time." The human soldier straightened, gripping his weapon tighter. "Then we fight our way out, together." She hesitated, torn between centuries of tradition dictating that rulers stay protected and the undeniable fact that survival required action. Finally, nodding sharply, she activated a secondary interface, revealing a hidden passageway behind one of the ornate panels. This leads to the lower levels. From there, we can access the escape pods. Before they could move, the door to the chamber exploded inward, sending shards of metal and debris scattering across the floor. Through the smoke and chaos emerged a towering mechanized suit, piloted by the mercenary leader whose cruel grin was visible even through the reinforced visor. Behind him, waves of armed soldiers poured in, their weapons trained on the pair. "End of the line," the leader snarled, raising his massive arm-mounted cannon. Without hesitation, the queen unleashed a torrent of energy, creating a temporary shield that deflected the initial barrage. The human darted forward, firing precise shots to create openings in the enemy ranks. Together, they formed an unlikely but effective team, one defending while the other attacked, their movements synchronized as though choreographed by fate itself. But the sheer number of adversaries began to take its toll. The queen stumbled momentarily, exhaustion evident in her strained expression. Sensing her vulnerability, the mercenary leader lunged, his mech-enhanced fist smashing into the ground where she had stood just moments before. The human tackled her out of harm's way, rolling them both behind a toppled console. "This isn't working," he panted, reloading his weapon. "We need another plan." Her mind raced, searching for options amidst the chaos. Then it hit her, the ancient defense systems embedded within the palace itself. If she could reach the central core, she might be able to activate them, turning the palace into a fortress capable of repelling the invaders. "There's a way," she said urgently, meeting his gaze. "But it's risky." "Risky is better than dead," he replied grimly. "What do you need?" "Cover me," she instructed, already moving toward the hidden passageway. He nodded, rising to provide suppressive fire as she slipped into the narrow corridor. The mercenaries roared in frustration, redoubling their efforts to break through his defenses. Bullets ricocheted off walls, narrowly missing him as he dove for cover behind another console. Gritting his teeth, he fired back with renewed determination, knowing that every second counted. Sweat dripped down his brow, but he refused to yield, driven by the knowledge that her success depended on his ability to hold the line. Meanwhile, the queen navigated the labyrinthine passages with practiced ease, her thoughts consumed by the task ahead. Reaching the central core, she placed her hands on the pulsating crystal at its heart, channeling her energy into awakening the dormant systems. Lights flickered to life throughout the palace, accompanied by the whirring of ancient mechanisms springing into action. Back in the chamber, the human noticed the change immediately. Turrets emerged from concealed alcoves, targeting the intruders with relentless precision. Automated drones swarmed the area, providing additional support. The tide of battle shifted dramatically, giving him the opening he needed to retreat toward the passageway. Just as he reached the entrance, a deafening explosion rocked the chamber, collapsing part of the ceiling and sealing off the main entrance. The remaining mercenaries scrambled to regroup, their advantage slipping away. Panting heavily, he staggered into the corridor, finding the queen waiting for him. "You did it," he breathed, relief washing over him. "For now," she corrected, her expression grave. "But they won't give up so easily. We need to leave now." Together, they hurried through the twisting passages, guided by the faint glow of emergency lights. The palace continued to shake violently, evidence of the ongoing struggle above. As they approached the docking bay housing the escape pods, the sound of pursuit echoed behind them, distant but unmistakable. "They're following us," he warned, glancing over his shoulder. "Then we run faster," she urged, pushing onward despite her fatigue. Rounding a final corner, they burst into the docking bay, where several sleek pods awaited launch. Selecting one, she quickly initiated the pre-flight sequence while he kept watch, weapon at the ready. As the pod's engines powered up, the first wave of pursuers appeared, pouring into the bay with weapons blazing. He returned fire, holding them at bay until the last possible moment. When the hatch sealed shut behind him, he collapsed onto the seat beside her, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "Where to now?" he asked, his voice tinged with both exhaustion and determination. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the controls. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere we can plan our next move." With that, the pod launched, hurtling away from the embattled palace and into the vast expanse of space. Behind them, the once mighty structure stood resilient against the onslaught, its ancient defenses buying them precious time. But as stars streaked past the viewport, neither could shake the feeling that their journey was far from over, and that the true battle lay ahead. As the escape pod hurtled through the void of space, its interior was silent save for the soft hum of the engines and their synchronized breathing. The alien queen sat rigidly at first, her hands still gripping the controls as though afraid to let go. Beside her, the human leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes briefly before turning to study her profile. "You know," he began, breaking the silence with a tone that was equal parts teasing and sincere, "for someone who threatened to kill me earlier today, you're not half bad." Her lips twitched ever so slightly, though she didn't look at him. "And you, for someone who insults my empire while staring shamelessly, are surprisingly tolerable." He chuckled softly, the sound warm and genuine. "Shamelessly? I thought I was being subtle." She finally turned to meet his gaze, her glowing eyes tinged with amusement. "Subtle does not describe anything about you, human." "Fair point," he admitted, grinning. Then, after a pause, he added more seriously, "Thank you for trusting me back there. Not many people would have taken that risk." Her expression softened, just a fraction, but enough for him to notice. "And thank you for staying when you could have fled. Most would have." They shared a long look then, one that spoke volumes without words. It wasn't gratitude or camaraderie alone. It was something deeper, an unspoken acknowledgement of the connection forming between them, a bond forged in chaos and mutual respect. The pod's navigation system beeped softly, pulling her attention back to the console. She adjusted the course, setting it for a remote outpost on the edge of neutral territory. It wasn't safe, exactly, but it was far enough from her enemies to give them time to regroup. "We'll need supplies," she said, her voice steady again, though warmth lingered beneath the surface. "Food, medical kits, and answers." "Answers?" he echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Yes." She glanced at him sidelong. "You intrigue me, human. Your species is reckless, impulsive, and yet capable of such courage. You fight not just for survival but for others. That is rare among any race." He shrugged modestly. "Maybe we're not all bad. Or maybe I'm just weird for my kind." "Perhaps both," she replied dryly, earning another laugh from him. But then her tone shifted, becoming softer. "Tell me more about your world. What drives you?" For the next hour they talked, really talked. He spoke of Earth, describing its beauty and fragility, its endless skies and oceans. He told her stories of humanity's triumphs and failures, of wars fought and peace sought. She listened intently, fascinated by his descriptions of cultures vastly different from her own. In turn, she shared glimpses of her empire. The sprawling cities built among stars, the ancient traditions passed down through generations, the weight of ruling millions across galaxies. Her voice carried pride, yes, but also weariness. Ruling came with sacrifices, burdens she bore silently until now. At one point, she described the royal palace in detail. Its crystalline spires that refracted light into rainbows, the gardens where bioluminescent flowers bloomed under twin moons. As she spoke, her eyes lit up with nostalgia, and he found himself captivated. Not by the grandeur of her home, but by the way her face transformed when she spoke of it. "You miss it," he observed quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. "It is more than a palace. It is everything I am meant to protect. To lose it would mean losing myself." He reached out instinctively, placing a hand over hers where it rested on the console. The touch startled her, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she looked down at their joined hands, her fingers pale against his darker skin, and felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. "You won't lose it," he said firmly. "Not if I can help it." Her throat tightened, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. No one had ever offered her such simple, unwavering support before. Leaders weren't supposed to rely on others, they were supposed to stand alone. Yet here he was, promising to fight for something he barely understood, simply because she cared about it. When she finally met his gaze, there were tears shimmering in her luminous eyes. Tears she quickly blinked away, embarrassed. "Why do you care so much?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled gently, squeezing her hand. "Because you're worth caring about, and maybe because you remind me of home. A place worth fighting for, no matter how impossible the odds." That admission hung between them, fragile and profound. For the first time in what felt like forever, She allowed herself to feel hope, not just for her empire but for herself. Here, in this tiny pod adrift in the cosmos, she wasn't just a queen burdened by duty. She was simply herself. Their conversation continued late into the journey, punctuated by laughter, quiet reflections, and moments of comfortable silence. When fatigue finally caught up with them, they took turns resting, each unwilling to leave the other entirely alone. At one point, she woke to find him watching the stars outside the viewport, his expression thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" she asked sleepily, sitting up. He glanced at her, smiling faintly. Home, and how sometimes home isn't a place. Sometimes it's people. Her heart skipped a beat, though she masked it well. Philosophical musings from a soldier? I'm impressed. "Hey, I've got layers," he teased, earning a snort of laughter from her. As they drew closer to the outpost, the tension returned, reminding them that danger still loomed. But even as they prepared for whatever lay ahead, neither could deny the shift between them. What had started as defiance and curiosity had blossomed into something neither expected nor fully understood. A bond rooted in trust, admiration, and perhaps something even stronger. When the outpost finally came into view, a small, weathered station orbiting a barren moon, he turned to her with a wry grin. "Ready to take on the galaxy again?" She straightened, her regal bearing returning as she prepared to face whatever challenges awaited. But before she responded, she placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch lingering. "Together," she said simply, her voice firm yet tender. The outpost proved to be a temporary haven, its ramshackle structures and grizzled inhabitants offering both sanctuary and resources. The human and the alien queen worked tirelessly over the following weeks, piecing together allies scattered across neutral territories while evading relentless pursuit from factions eager to dismantle her empire. Their bond deepened with each passing day, forged not just in moments of quiet vulnerability, but also in shared battles against overwhelming odds. One evening, as they sat side by side on the rusted balcony of their makeshift quarters, watching twin suns dip below the horizon of a distant planet, she turned to him with an expression he couldn't quite place, soft yet resolute. "Do you ever wonder," she began hesitantly, "what life would be like without all this chaos? Without war or duty?" He tilted his head, considering her question. "Sometimes. But then I think, maybe peace isn't about escaping the chaos. Maybe it's about finding someone who makes the chaos worth enduring." Her breath hitched, her glowing eyes searching his face for something unspoken. Finally, she whispered, "And have you found that someone?" His smile was slow, warm, and full of certainty. "I think I have." For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of his words hanging between them like stardust suspended in still air. Then, surprising even herself, she leaned into him, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. It was such a small gesture, but it carried more meaning than any royal decree or battlefield victory ever could. Months passed, and their efforts bore fruit. With the help of loyalists smuggled out of the palace during the siege, they launched a daring counterattack, reclaiming key systems and dismantling the mercenaries' hold on her empire piece by piece. Each victory brought them closer to restoring order, and closer to envisioning a future beyond conflict. When the final battle ended, the palace once again stood tall under twin moons, its crystalline spires gleaming brighter than ever. As she ascended the throne amidst cheers from her people, he stood quietly at the edge of the grand hall, content to remain in the shadows where he felt most comfortable. Yet when her gaze swept over the crowd and landed on him, her smile said everything. He wasn't invisible to her. He never had been. That night, after the celebrations died down and the palace grew quiet, she sought him out in the gardens he'd heard so much about but never seen until now. Bioluminescent flowers bathed the space in soft, ethereal light, their petals swaying gently in the breeze. She found him standing near a fountain, gazing up at the stars. "You've done it," he said softly as she approached. "Your empire is safe." "My empire?" She raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "It wouldn't be safe if not for you." He shrugged modestly. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No," she countered firmly, taking his hand in hers. "You did far more than that. You reminded me why I fight. For beauty, for connection, for hope." Her voice softened. "For us." His heart skipped a beat. "Us?" She nodded, her luminous eyes shimmering with emotion. "I've spent my life protecting my people, my throne, my legacy. But none of it matters if I can't share it with someone who sees me. not just as a queen, but as myself. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes, though he blinked them away quickly. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Her lips curved into a radiant smile. If you'll have me, I'd like nothing more than to build a life with you, to create something new, something beautiful, together. His laugh was bright, almost disbelieving. Are you asking me to marry you, Your Majesty? Only if you promise to keep calling me that, she teased, pulling him closer. I promise, he murmured before kissing her, their laughter mingling with the gentle hum of the garden around them. Their wedding took place beneath those same twin moons, surrounded by friends, allies, and subjects who had come to adore the unlikely pair. The ceremony blended human traditions with alien customs, creating a celebration unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. When they exchanged vows, hers spoken in a melodic tongue that seemed to dance through the air, his delivered with heartfelt simplicity. The entire assembly erupted in cheers, sealing their union with joyous applause. Years later, the palace became home not just to rulers but to children whose laughter echoed through its halls. There were 5 of them in total, each one a perfect blend of their parents' traits. Some with glowing eyes like their mother, others with stubborn resilience like their father. Together, the family created a legacy not of conquest or power but of love, unity, and hope. They ruled side by side, guiding their empire toward prosperity while raising their children to value kindness as much as strength. Though challenges arose, they faced them together, always drawing strength from the bond that had begun with a single defiant glance and grown into something eternal. In the end, theirs was a story written among the stars, a tale of 2 souls from different worlds who dared to defy convention, embrace chaos, and find peace in each other's arms. And as they watched their children play beneath the shimmering spires of the palace, the alien queen and her human husband knew they had achieved something truly remarkable. A life filled with love, laughter, and the kind of happiness that made every sacrifice worthwhile.